Chapter 6. Threads of Trust. Willem Cade stood at the center of the Spire's strategy hall, his gaze fixed on the shifting holographic layers spinning above the main table. The field map showed growing Nullum disturbances across multiple sectors. Temporal grid lines, memory lattice points, and worst of all, at harmonic relay junctions long considered untouchable. Oren entered first, still pale from the mirror layer encounter. Valen followed, face tight with unspoken calculations. Aaron sat nearest the projection controls, running algorithmic simulations faster than the system could render. Solon stood at the far end, hands clasped behind his back, watching everything, and saying nothing. Willem broke the silence. Trust, that's what we need to talk about. No one moved, no one interrupted. The Eidolon didn't just mimic us, Willem continued. It knew our past decisions, our regrets. It knew weaknesses none of us ever spoke aloud. Valen tilted his head. We've run clean through every cognitive barrier test for years. None of us should have exposure leaks like that. Solon finally spoke. Unless one of us fractured first. The room froze. Aaron lowered his data slate, looking up sharply. You're implying internal compromise. Solon met each of their gazes in turn. I'm implying we entertain every possibility. Trust is earned, recalibrated, and if necessary, rebuilt from scratch. Oren shifted uncomfortably. We don't have time for paranoia. Nullum doesn't wait for council votes. Willem raised a hand, silencing them all. Enough. The situation demands clarity, not fractures within fractures. Initiating the Trust Weave protocol. Voxarian materialized beside the table, his form more translucent than usual, a sign of growing strain between the root layers and the echo grid. Activate the Trust Weave, he said. A collective intake of breath rippled through the room. Even Valen paled. Aaron protested first. We haven't used the Trust Weave since the Ark Rebellion. It's invasive, dangerous. And necessary, Voxarian countered. The Nullum Prime thrives on doubt, on fragmentation. If even one thread among you has frayed, it will unravel everything. Willem nodded grimly. Do it. Minutes later, the room transformed. Walls dissolved into cascading matrices of light and waveform density. Each team member took their position at assigned anchor points, stepping onto personal resonance plates. The Trust Weave began. Light thread tendrils emerged from the floor, wrapping around each person, syncing heart rate, thought pattern, and harmonic baseline. Memories surfaced, raw, unfiltered, sometimes brutal. Every lie told, every truth withheld, laid bare for the others to see. Valen flinched as the image of him falsifying data during his early cadet years flickered to the group. Oren reeled as visions of him considering defection during the Mercury collapse danced across the walls. Aaron visibly winced, reliving his decision to let an entire outpost fall during the Theta Rift, saving his own research but sacrificing hundreds. Willem stood silent through it all, eyes locked, until finally, his own hidden truth surfaced, a single decision, buried deep from the early days of his architect leadership. He had known about the instability within the harmonic grid far earlier than he'd admitted. Had chosen to delay the council vote. Had told himself it was to buy time. But deep down, it had been fear. Solon watched them all with unreadable eyes. Then, with a deliberate breath, he stepped forward. Without warning, Solon opened his mental weave for all to see. A staggering array of hidden operations, concealed choices, and ethically grey actions taken in defense of the architect cause over decades. Oren staggered back. Solon, you covered entire sequence failures, buried entire memory corridors. Solon spoke calmly. Because if I hadn't, none of you would be standing here now. The Trust Weave pulsed, evaluating, measuring, aligning. After a long, agonizing pause, the matrix resolved into a single tone. Not perfect harmony, not full dissonance. Something else, fractured but holding. Voxarian lowered his head. Sufficient for the next phase. Strategic response, the Nullum advance. With the Trust Weave complete, the Council began immediate planning. Aaron presented new data. Nullum signatures are concentrating at 3 known resonant foci points: the aeonic coil, the Dominion lens, and the Mnemos engine. If they anchor inside any of those structures, we'll lose phase control over the entire Echo grid. Valen pulled up real-time simulations. Probability paths suggest the first strike will hit the Aeonic coil within 18 hours. Willem turned toward Oren. We deploy in 3 waves, 1 team for each target. Staggered entry, but synchronized execution. Oren nodded. I'll lead the coil mission. Solon stepped forward. I'll take the Dominion lens. Aaron adjusted his interface. And I'll hold the Mnemos engine. His gaze darkened. I built its memory architecture. I'll protect it. Willem placed his hand on the central node, initiating the deployment sequences. We move at dawn. If Nullum wants to play inside our Echo grid, we meet them head-on. Above the spire, the horizon crackled with pre-storm energy. The next battle of the Echo War was hours away. End of Chapter 6. Chapter 7. The Aeonic Coil Assault. The Aeonic Coil hovered like a toroidal crown above the Meridian Rift, a structure forged from harmonic alloys and temporal folding fields. Its layers spun in opposing directions, creating a controlled gravitational singularity at the core. Designed to regulate time flow integrity within the Echo grid, the coil was both a marvel and a last line of defense. Oren Cade stood with his field team aboard the dropskiff, streaking low through turbulent air as Nullum interference thickened the skies ahead. Valen sat at the rear console, rerouting stabilizer currents. Nullum's already begun phase-shifting local time bands. We're reading temporal fragmentation zones within a 5-kilometer radius of the coil. Aaron, patched in remotely from the Mnemos engine, chimed through comms. Your window is short. If the coil falls, Mnemos becomes next. Oren checked his phase rifle, calibrating the anti-causal rounds. We won't let it fall. Descent into the rift. As the skiff breached the rift boundary, the landscape below twisted like melted glass. Buildings blinked in and out of historical phases, one moment ancient ruins, the next sleek monolithic structures from far futures yet to come. Nullum drones patrolled the air, geometric prisms shifting in and out of local space. Their outer shells refracted both light and memory, making target lock nearly impossible. Oren gave the order. Full spectral dampening, manual drop from here. The team disengaged from the skiff, free-falling toward the coil platform. Mid-descent, Oren activated his harmonic stabilizers, slowing their fall just enough to land in coordinated formation. Valen unleashed a phase pulse wave, clearing immediate hostiles. Energy feedback sparked against Nullum fields, sending flickers of blue and gold lightning across the coil's surface. Infiltration and resistance. The team moved inward, skirting fractured temporal zones where seconds looped endlessly. Oren narrowly avoided a time pocket where debris froze and refroze mid-collapse. One misstep, and any of them could become trapped in a perpetual death loop. Reading primary Nullum anchor at the coil's central nexus, Valen reported. But it's shielded by a chronal lattice. We'll need a destabilization surge. Oren keyed into central comms. Willem, we need a harmonic override pulse from the spire. Channel it through the coil's resonance relays. Willem's voice answered instantly. Calculating alignment. Stand by. While they waited, the Nullum resistance intensified. Eidolon-class entities began appearing from the distortion field, manifestations of past, failed Echo timelines. Oren found himself facing a twisted version of himself, gaunt and hollow-eyed, wearing the insignia of Nullum Prime. The doppelganger spoke in Oren's own voice. Every choice you make leads here. Resistance is mathematics delaying certainty. Oren fired without hesitation, anti-causal rounds disrupting the entity into fractal dust. The harmonic override. Above them, the sky fractured as the spire launched a focused harmonic pulse. Light lanced down in geometric waves, striking the coil and sending a ripple of stabilization across the platform. Valen screamed over comms. Shield lattice dropping. Now's our chance. Oren led the charge toward the central nexus. The Nullum anchor pulsed like a blackened star, its tendrils woven deep into the coil's timeline regulators. Without hesitation, Oren deployed the Echo Disruptor, a weapon only used in theoretical testing until today. It released a spherical wave of reverse causality, erasing the Nullum anchor across both past and present moments simultaneously. The anchor imploded in a cascade of light and silence. Time around them stuttered, then realigned, aftermath and forward orders. As the coil resumed normal spin, the air settled. The Nullum drones disintegrated, their existence erased by the retroactive burst. Wheelam's voice returned over comms. "Coil integrity stabilizing. Excellent work." Oren wiped sweat from his brow, staring at the now clear horizon. "One target neutralized, 2 more to go." Valen nodded, already preparing the next field report. "Dominion lens and Nemos engine. Solon and Eron will need us ready to reinforce." Oren turned back toward the waiting extraction craft. The war against Nullum wasn't just about defending the present anymore, it was about rewriting the future. End of Chapter 7. Chapter 8. The Dominion Lens Gambit. The Dominion Lens stood suspended on the far side of the Echo Grid, orbiting within the temporal verge, a region where choice, observation, and probability collapsed into pure quantum intent. It was not a place for hesitation. The lens processed every decision made near it, amplifying consequences and projecting ripples across timeline strata. Solon Vey prepared in silence. Standing aboard the transport craft, slicing through phase corridors toward the lens, Solon reviewed the mission schematic. Nullum had already seeded a probability contagion into the verge field. Left unchecked, the infection would cascade, altering decision branches for billions. The lens was not just a machine, it was a decision amplifier. If Nullum gained control here, they wouldn't just rewrite history, they'd pre-write it. Thassel accompanied Solon as tactical lead, supported by 2 Echo Guard squads trained in anti-probability warfare. Each member wore layered phase thread armor, reinforced with decision lock filaments, experimental tech designed to prevent cognitive override. The moment their ship broke through the verge threshold, the world around them shifted. Choices became tangible, air rippled with unrealized options. The sound of every possible word anyone could speak hung thick in the atmosphere. Thassel's voice came through modulated filters. "Reality density is at 6.3 terachronic units. Any further and even thinking the wrong thought could trigger a divergence." Solon nodded, eyes narrowing as he approached the viewing deck. The Dominion lens came into focus, a colossal disk of fractal light, rotating on invisible axes. Around it, Nullum constructs began materializing. Probability phantoms, non-localized threats feeding off every doubt the team carried. Engagement, the probability war. As the first Nullum wave struck, the team's Echo Guard deployed localized decision anchors, locking their action paths into pre-cleared sequences. Even so, some soldiers began glitching mid-movement, frozen between choices. Move left and survive, move right and erase. Thassel shouted, "Nullum's infecting baseline decision logic. They're making us question micro-actions in real time." Solon remained calm. He stepped forward, entering the lens' immediate field. Probability waves collided around him, splitting reality into dozens of simultaneous possibilities. Multiple versions of Solon played out across moments, one charging into battle, one hesitating, one falling, one victorious. Solon closed his eyes, centering himself. He chose stillness, chose clarity, chose control. His body solidified. The conflicting versions collapsed into one. Lifting his harmonic disruptor, Solon fired a concentrated resonance burst directly at the Nullum contagion source. A black-veined seed node latched into the lens understructure. The shot pierced the node, releasing a shockwave of causality stabilization. Decision clarity returned to the team instantly. Staggered soldiers regained focus, their movements now fluid and unbroken. The lens itself reacted to Solon's intervention, its surfaces brightened, displaying cascading choice trees. One path glowed stronger than the rest, revealing Nullum's next likely target, the Mnemos engine. Thassel turned to Solon, wide-eyed. "Aaron's sight, they're moving fast." Solon nodded. "We don't have time to rest. Get us out of the verge. Direct link the lens output to Willem and the Spire." As the extraction sequence initiated, the lens spun faster, projecting probability shields outward to hold the verge steady. Solon stood for a long moment, absorbing the lesson embedded in the battle. In a war where reality itself was malleable, the most dangerous weapon wasn't technology or time, it was doubt, and Solon had none left. End of Chapter 8. Echo Convergence. The spire's uppermost level, known as the Atrium of Futures, had not hosted a full council gathering in over 2 decades. The glass-like ceiling shimmered with real-time displays of unfolding causality. Quantum thread monitors showed thousands of timeline variations flickering in and out of coherence. Willem Cade stood at the central platform, overlooking the assembly. All 3 teams, fresh from the Aeonic Coil, the Dominion Lens, and the Nemus engine, stood before him, uniforms torn, faces bruised, minds stretched thin but intact. Voxarian appeared first, his form pulsing brighter than usual, almost strained by the harmonic pressure building across the echo grid. Nullum Prime has manifested within the convergence corridor, Voxarian announced. Reality density at the site is destabilizing. The walls between past, present, and unrealized futures are breaking. Solon stepped forward. How much time before collapse? 12 hours, Voxarian answered. Maybe less. Oren's voice cut through the room. We wait too long, and the confluence becomes their permanent anchor. Willem exhaled sharply. We won't wait. Strategic assembly, the final push. Holographic terrain maps of the Echo confluence filled the chamber. The confluence wasn't just geography, it was a harmonic intersection point, where decision threads from every timeline braided through one temporal locus. Aaron highlighted critical zones on the display. Nullum's primary field anchor is building around the chrysalis node, right at the convergence heart. Valen pulled up casualty projections. If we engage without timeline stabilization, any member of this team could become unanchored mid-mission. Best case? Instant non-existence. Worst case? Echo drift and permanent memory overwrite. Thassel, standing by Solon, added, We'll need waveform suppression teams in constant relay or risk full causality collapse before even reaching the node. Willem's gaze darkened. Then we move with synchronization. No hesitation, no variance. He turned to Voxarian. Activate Phase Link Alpha. Bring the Resonant Arsenal online. Preparation, the Resonant Arsenal. For the first time since the Ark Rebellion, the Spire's most advanced weapons unlocked. Phase-piercing cannons, anti-echo disruptors, and the rarest of all, personalized echo blades, each forged with the user's unique harmonic signature. Oren strapped on a double-phase gauntlet, each pulse chamber crackling with barely contained energy. Valen holstered dual echo vector pistols, their calibration set to target non-linear threats. Solon, silent and measured, took possession of the Chrono Edge, a blade rumored to sever both space and memory in a single cut. Aaron, donning a pulse amplifier harness, connected directly to the Mnemo's engine's sublayer, giving him control over localized memory restoration fields. Willem stood last, equipping the resonance core stabilizer, a device designed not to destroy, but to choose which timeline survived. Phase link initiation. Voxarian's form grew larger, extending into a projection that enveloped the entire chamber. By entering the confluence, each of you becomes both agent and anchor of this reality. Your choices inside will determine which version of existence remains when the convergence completes. You will face nullum echo forms, counterfactual anomalies, and entities born from the rejection of timelines. Most dangerous of all, you will face the lost echo itself. Silence fell across the room. Solon broke it. We're ready. Oren smiled grimly. We were born for this. Aaron, adjusting his gear, added, Let's finish what they started. Willem stepped forward. Team Alpha, on me. All units prepare for phase descent. The floor beneath them began to ripple as the phase link powered up. Lights across the spire dimmed, diverting full grid energy toward one singular purpose: insertion into the convergence corridor. Time folded, the architects of tomorrow vanished from the spire and entered the most unstable point in recorded history. The corridor of fractures. In an instant, the world around them ceased to obey natural law. The team emerged mid-stride inside the corridor of fractures, a shifting, labyrinthine tunnel of fragmented reality stitched together by unstable harmonic seams. Space twisted inward and outward simultaneously. Floors became ceilings. Gravity pulsed in rhythmic intervals, changing direction with each heartbeat. Willem landed first, rolling to absorb the impact. The phase link still hummed in his bones. He stood, eyes scanning the disorienting environment. Already, reality here was breaking apart. All around them, splinters of alternate timelines floated like shards of broken glass, each reflecting twisted versions of Earth, the Spire, and the team themselves. Oren stumbled to his feet, cursing under his breath. Nothing in training prepares you for this. Valen stabilized, adjusting his frequency anchor module. Stay synced. If any of us dephases, we'll be pulled into non-linear drift. Solon emerged from a fold in the wall, sword in hand, his movements fluid even within the chaos. Eren checked his stabilization relay, already beginning to map the fluctuating echo currents around them. Manifestations of regret. The first assault came without warning. From the far end of the corridor, entities began to form half-human, half-shadow, each wearing familiar faces distorted by Nullum corruption. One bore the likeness of Eron's sister, long deceased but now laughing with malice. Another mimicked Oren, a version of him that had joined Nullum years earlier in an abandoned timeline. The Eidolon forms advanced, moving with impossible speed, distorting distance between steps. Willem reacted first, unleashing a harmonic burst wave. The ground beneath the Eidolon cracked apart, momentarily scattering them into temporal mist. "Stay in tight formation," Willem ordered. Valen fired twin-phase pistols, each round singing with destabilizing frequency, vaporizing one of the shadow forms. But for each entity they erased, another emerged. Solon called over the comlink. "They're feeding off our regret imprints. Every moment of doubt becomes a portal for them." Oren grimaced. "Then let's give them nothing to feed on." The team surged forward, cutting through the corridor, their coordinated assault driving a wedge through the advancing Eidolon. Confronting the Echo Rift. At the corridor's heart, the team reached a towering rupture. The Echo Rift. A gaping wound in space-time, the rift tore sideways across reality like a black lightning-lit scar. Within its folds, flashes of impossible futures blinked in and out of visibility Earth under Nullum rule. A spire burning. Voxarian shattered and inert, even Willem himself, alone and lost at the end of time. Eren's voice wavered. "This is the focal point of the convergence event. The Nullum prime anchor is inside." Willem stepped closer to the rift, scanning the harmonic field densities. The energy here was toxic to standard timeline anchors. Prolonged exposure risked full personality disintegration, yet still, there was no choice. Solon sheathed his chrono edge. "What's the plan?" Willem exhaled. "We breach the rift, disengage from linear causality, and confront Nullum Prime on its chosen ground." Valen's eyes widened. A direct echo dive into fragmented causal space? Oren smirked, charging his gauntlets. "We always wanted to make history." Willem placed his hand on the phase synchronizer, initiating final sequence protocols. "Remember this moment," he said quietly. "It's the last time we stand as who we are. On the other side, we become something else." With that, the team stepped together into the rift, vanishing into blinding white, pulled toward the heart of the Echo War.